Good morning, Hacksters! Today in the studio, well, the virtual studio, we have Debra Ansell, who is also known as GeekMomProjects, and also is the creator of Bright Wearables, which is a line of LED wearable products. Good morning, Debra, what's up?
Not too much. I'm really excited to be here, and I think I am straining these circuits in my office right now. I've never plugged in all my projects at once. It feels like I'm having an art retrospective, getting all my projects up and going at the same time. So this is kind of fun to see them all together.
That's so great. It looks like the Santa Monica Pier over there. I think it's the whirly thing.
It does kind of feel like that, yeah.
So you've been doing, the reason I reached out to you specifically now is because you were doing some amazing work over the end of last year with some clear LEDs, or LEDs embedded in clear acrylic. And this seems to be a really cool theme with you, and I'd love to explore it. Would you like to show us some of the things you were making at the end of last year?
Yeah, I can pull up some. I tend to, not all my projects are working all at once, but I think this is one of the projects you showed in your promo. Hopefully it will come off. There's a little bit of sunlight in my office right now. But yeah, I love the look of LEDs embedded in clear acrylic and the, spreading the light around. My goal in making these projects is really to kind of make the light fill space. Don't get me wrong. I love LED matrices. I love just point LEDs, but I almost feel like I want to paint with LEDs, and the diffusion through material is really one of the best ways to do that. So I've been trying different mediums. So I had this spiral, you can see.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks. And it's this, with some experimentation, I found kind of the best way, kind of the most interesting way, because you can embed it in really flat, thin media, is to use side emitting LEDs, those 4020 WS212s, WS2812, sorry. And I used it, actually, I had a kind of functional use for it. This, I made a, oops, it's backwards, it looks better for front. For Hanukkah this year. I made two of them actually, using that same technique. And my goal is really, in making projects, as much as I can, to make the electronics disappear and spread the light out and diffuse the light as much as possible. And that's been a lot of fun. I actually started, the first project I made like this was actually written up for Make Magazine. And I started with, kind of a simple, I guess it's not plugged in right now, but I have I started with an LED heart. The instructions for this are in Make Magazine, and this is actually a regular LED strip, just folded in half and put in sideways between some thicker acrylic, which is also a nice effect and fairly simple to do. That idea came to me like a while ago, but once I started playing with the side emitting 4020 LEDs, it made it really nice. You could fit them in really kind of narrow spaces and get the light to emit off, to diffuse nicely without making the LED itself really, really appear prominently. So.
I love how you describe that as kind of painting with them through the way that the LEDs diffuse through the plastic. It's so evocative of exactly what you're doing. Oh, and the one doing the little zoomies side to side with the white, not seeing a rainbow. I can't stop staring at it. The Connect 4 looking one.
The Connect 4, yeah, I can't. That was a little fragile. I can't pick that one up too well. But this one right here, yeah, that one was. Actually, you guys wrote up, Tom Fleet wrote up a really, really lovely article about this. Because he so it's in the Hackster.io.
Hackster.io/news.
That's it. And this was fun too, because, it's a matrix, but, the pixels are circles, and the light diffuses through all the pixels. I can't pick this up because it's really, each of these little circles is press fit into the grid here, so they tend to fall out periodically. So I was really looking for a way to make them sturdier, because this uses, this is a little thicker than the other grid, and the LED strips are standard LED strips with the kind of forward-facing WS212 LEDs. So these basically up into each of the LEDs. It's not connected to anything. I wonder if I have it here. I did do a kind of embedded LED strip version of it that I don't see right now, but that was using the same kind of these side emitting LEDs.
You get such a soft look when you're not staring directly into the LEDs instead of going through and like just being used to illuminate the material.
That is exactly right, Mike. I feel like my life's goal is a quest for the perfect way to diffuse things, diffusion. And I've tried everything from like the hot glue is actually
Oh
really
yeah,
surprisingly good.
that looks great.
Yep, thanks. And I've tried a number of different acrylics, and really I think I found the best one to diffuse. There's the acrylics that diffuse light in limited hotspots, and then there's the ones that really do a nice job of diffusing within the medium. And that's what that one is using right there. And yeah, and spreading it around is not just spreading the light around, like painting with it, is, you know, diffusing it through like, you know, a medium like acrylic or hot glue. And also, not to take you into a different topic, but, you know, I just started playing with infinity mirrors and found a lot of, really, that's been a lot of fun for me too. And, you know, people have been doing them for years and years, and I never really got around to playing with it. And then I realized just how much fun it could be, especially when you use materials that can bend, mirrored materials that are not flat and straight. And
even in wearables, you usually see like flat infinity mirror projects, and you've been doing a lot with these sort of films. What is that exactly you're using?
I'm using it's iridescent translucent acrylic. You have to be careful because there's iridescent acrylic that's not translucent. It's easy to find. I'm working on a color version that's right up for Adafruit right here. It's on a short leash right now, so I can't do that. But this is just, actually, this is it right here. It's just vinyl.
Wow.
I hope I didn't say acrylic. It's translucent, usually billed as holographic vinyl. And as long as you make sure you can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it on AliExpress, and cut it with a knife. You cannot cut it with a laser cutter because it is vinyl. But yeah, it's great because it's got the reflective properties of, you know, a lot of people I've seen the infinity mirror builds with that semi-reflective, you know, film you put on acrylic or semi-reflective acrylic, but this works just as well, and it's pretty easy to work with. I think that, I don't know if like I said, the fact that I managed to get it. I love that. Thanks. The fact that I managed to get it to a Mobius strip was, you know, shows you that you can do a lot with it. So yeah, that was actually, the funny thing is I tried to do it, make a second version, and realized that I'd kind of lucked into exactly the right design the first time. Because it was much harder. But it wasn't that bad to build the first time. And if I'd known actually, like, had I actually started with my second layout, it would have been harder, or I might have given up. So anyway, sorry, I know I've jumped to, you know,
that's great topics. No, it's your show. This is so cool. And if people do want to see close-ups of these, they can always look at your Instagram or your at GeekMomProjects.com. You can see close-ups of like the infinity mirror Mobius strip and of that cool. This is really showing, I think. Yeah. You're so good at showing like exactly how you've made these things. So here's that grid that we were looking at. Oh, that's so incredible. You really can't see the LEDs in there at all. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I'm glad you noticed it. And in Tom's write-up, actually, he really did a very nice job of pointing out exactly why that is. Oh, my dog is trying to break in the mouth. I have to be nice to her because she sometimes models my creations. Come on, Coco. And
what's her name?
This is Coco. And she's my sometimes model. She did model the collar for me, so she does. But yeah, Tom did a really nice job of explaining exactly, that's right, what about the diffused LED matrix makes it look so nice. And yeah, he really understood kind of what about this matrix made it interesting and a little bit different from most LED matrices you've seen. So that's it. If you want a good like kind of deep dive, much more explicit than I explained in Instagram or Twitter, I definitely read the article because he kind of got it. I was so happy when I saw that right up.
Well, we'll drop that in the description to this video, everyone. Of course, you can always scroll down right now and click on some of the links down there to check out things in more depth. But we have a couple of questions. So Dillermaster says, do you have a laser cutter at home? And Tariq also asks, what's your process? So I feel like those are related.
Okay, they are. Yes, I actually have 2 laser cutters. I'm very spoiled. And that is actually part of my I'm inspired by the tools I get. I started years ago, when I first saw laser cutting, I thought this is so cool. And I joined a local makerspace to be able to use the laser cutter there. Unfortunately, it moved to about 45 minutes away. And after a while of commuting and, to get your projects done, I decided that, I'd like that it'd be really, really nice. And knowing that, I was going to keep using it. I actually found a used Chinese laser cutter and bought it, just kind of sight unseen. And then only when I went to pick it up did I realize it was 700 pounds. So that's a whole story in and of itself, but that lives in my garage. And then, but I did use it an incredible amount. I found having the tools, this actually speaks to the creative process too, having the tools available really sparks the process, because I'm a very impulsive maker. I tend to say, are you? Yes, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it produces a wide variety of ideas. And it's so much better for me if I can actually, if I have an idea and could pull it up right away to see what does it look like. That's great. So for example, when I started doing the string art, I was able to, go from, I wonder if this will work, to let's build a frame, laser cut it in a matter of minutes, or, hours actually. But so, yes. So anyway, with the laser cutter, then I had, the one downstairs was great. And then I actually got invited to help design some projects for an educational series of builds that Glowforge Laser Cutter Company was doing this summer. So they have a Glowforge education series of projects online, and I work a lot with kids. This is kind of separate, teaching coding, and I help with a local Los Angeles group that runs a summer camp. And so I'm very interested in education and how, and how kids see things and what can engage kids in wanting to learn with electronics and coding. So I know I'm wandering off topic here, but I'm going to reel this back in. So I got to build some projects for Glowforge, and as part of working with them, I got a Glowforge laser that now actually sits underneath my desk. It's by my feet right here. So I've gone from having to drive 45 minutes to my laser cutter to basically looking into my desk. I now find it like it's a little smaller here, so for big projects, I go down to the garage and use the bigger one. But I use it all the time, and as to how that influences my creative process, like I said, it's really spontaneous. I mean, I do try to plan things, and I had to, for the longest I've ever spent on a project was my wearables line, Bright Wearables. That went from an idea to okay, I wonder if this would, I'll actually demo, where I created a line of circuit boards that fit into bags and backpacks built around the microbit. And it started off, as my ideas often do, as kind of a kids project. I actually get a lot of inspiration from kids projects. So I said, because the microbit is such a cool, fun little programmable microcontroller. I'm like, and there were already existing LED add-on boards. And I'm like, well, what if we put that in a bag or a backpack? And I started with a lace-up kit. The idea was a lace-up kit that kids actually at my summer camp could put together. And then it kind of grew. And then I'm like, well, wait a second. What if they wanted to take the circuit board out and then, put it back in? I'm like, how could we make that detachable easily rather than lacing it in? And then I came up with the idea of, I don't know if you can see, there's snaps on the circuit board and corresponding snaps inside the bag. Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, this is one example of my it just kind of evolved from there, and I kept taking the idea to the next level, and I had to focus on this one for a long time. It took me really kind of a year of designing and all kinds of things. I had to learn how to source products from China, things like that. So that was probably the longest I've ever spent on a single process. More often, I'll see something, and just usually it starts out with, I wonder if this is possible. Like, I realize, I don't know, we haven't talked about this directly yet, but I've been doing these projects, these string art LED projects, which I clipped here to keep it vertical. And I realized the inspiration came from a kids class I was teaching using Python and TurtleDraw. I don't know if you guys go way back. It goes way back to people who learned to code a long time ago. TurtleDraw is you can use code to send a little icon
drawing
around the
robot or
screen.
whatever.
Yeah. And with the kids, I was drawing. So we actually started off by drawing patterns with kind of straight lines, a lot like string art. And of course, as always happens for me, I said, I wonder if you can do that with light. And so that was unfortunately that happened at the same time where somebody posted about this new kind of LED string they saw online. I saw that and it clicked together. I'm like, that might work. Let's put these together. And it was a let's try it. It was really just a let's try it moment. Most of my projects do start out as let's try it. And then if it works, then I iterate. And probably actually about half of them just don't work at all and I give up, but it's always
We have this great comment from someone that seems to apply to that. She's like, Debra is so awesome at acting on her ideas. None of this paralysis by overanalysis stuff.
Oh, I know that's Amelia, who's a dear friend. By the way, she has amazing LED wearables.
Oh, cool.
We did a swap. She has beautiful LED scarves, and she is she's meticulous in a way that I am not. The downside, the upside is that I have an explosion of ideas and I get to build them. The upside is none of them are perfect. None of them are amazing. And I tend to, it's hard not to kind of move on to the next idea before I finish the last. But there's so many things you could. It's honestly, I've to train myself to not jump from idea to idea as quickly. I've tried. When a new idea comes to me, I have a list now on my computer, and I start writing. I'm just keeping a list of things to try, so I don't have to try them immediately, and it's getting really long. So I will never be out of things to try. I've got lots of ideas in the hopper. But so my creative process is very spontaneous, basically, and it uses whatever. It's basically what do I see around me, and how might I use that, or what do I see on the internet, and that's interesting. How would that work?
And you say that you have trouble with meticulousness and iteration and things, but at the same time, you're like actually shipping products, which is incredible.
Thank you. And yes, that for me was a real accomplishment. I feel very proud of myself for actually taking it that far, because it took a long-term focus to do that. And it wasn't easy. But it's also kind of the work involved in that has given me a lot of pause every time someone says, oh, you should try to sell that. Like, I would. That sounds like a nice idea, but I know how much work that is. So, but I'm glad to have the experience for doing that.
Tell us about these tiles behind you. You have people oohing and awing over the grid. I want to give some love to these tiles as well.
Let me see if I can. I'm just going to try to tilt the camera a little. I know they're in the bright light, so they're not as... they're not as they show off much better in the dark. But that was my foray into circuit boards with LED art, into designing your own PCBs. Now I learned how to design PCBs for my Bright Wearables line. That was kind of the first time I jumped into it. And it was, talk about tools inspiring creativity. It was not, it's an amazingly powerful tool to be able to put your electronics sturdily in any kind of configuration you want. So after having, it took me a long time to actually figure. I was very intimidated when I started, and I'd actually hired somebody to do the first iteration of my PCBs, but it took so long. The turnaround was just too long for me, and the communication was a challenge to explain exactly what I wanted. So I took it over and just kind of forced myself through the process, and it turns out it's not that bad. You just have to be unafraid to make mistakes. There are definitely the most important thing. I know I'm drifting a little bit, but the most important thing I learned when creating projects with PCBs is somebody told me sometimes they come back good only for coasters, and that's okay. That's part of the process. So after a while, I'm like, okay, if I make a mistake, the worst thing that happens is I have a bunch of new funky looking coasters lying around the house. So let me explain that I actually really like these tiles in the background. What the inspiration for those was. Obviously, I think a lot of people have seen the tiles you put on the wall. I'm trying to remember what they're called now. I'm blanking on the name, but they came. Some company made them, and they're a bunch of knockoffs, and they're really cool, and they're modular, as these are. And
are those magnetic or?
No, they're screwed together. Here, let me see if I can. I'll have to unplug it to do it, but let me pull this up. These are different modular tiles. Let me figure out which plug this is. And they have, speaking of diffusion,
says Nanoleaf.
Nanolief. Thank you. That's exactly it. So these are PCBs with 3 for the triangles and 6 for the hexagons. Let me see if I can find a blank circuit board. Oh yeah, here's one. This is it's a different iteration. Well, I tried different methods, but they look kind of like this. Anyway, so
oh yeah,
they have side emitting LEDs on the front and then the circuitry on the back, and that's really all it is. And so you can make it very thin because they diffuse just like the circle matrix. They diffuse sideways into the material, and when it's dark, it diffuses very nicely and fills the tile. But it's nice because it's thin. They're held together. They're modular. They're not. I did try to figure out a way to make them easily connectable and disconnectable, but to have enough structure to be freestanding, they're actually held together with smaller circuit boards that have pressure connectors.
Huh.
So you just connect them with, you can see like here, you can see on the edges of this one. So there's just pads here, and the connectors, I don't think I have an empty one sitting around, have pressure fit connectors. So you just slap it on and that conducts the power. I have these are actually the designs for the triangle ones are up on GitHub.
Fantastic.
On my GeekMomProjects GitHub. So actually I've uploaded the Gerber files for those PCBs. And they're not, the hard part is soldering, surface mount soldering these little 20 LEDs is hard.
Yeah. Do you use solder paste and a stencil, or do you do it by hand?
No, I do it I use solder paste. I've never learned to use a stencil. I use solder paste. It takes a lot of patience, and solder paste, a very fine tip on the extruder. I have one of those solder paste syringes, and with a very, very fine tip extruder, and a very strong magnifying glass, and I just did little by little, and I've learned not too much heat, not too long, because LEDs are very fragile. So I have, probably about 1 out of every 6 LEDs I do that way, it doesn't work. So it's a lot of work and rework. People have said this would be a good commercial project, and I'm like, yeah, but I can't make it sturdy enough or easy enough to really, really do. It's a little fragile, but it's a very fun project, and you can arrange them any way you want.
Do you prefer the heat gun method or the hot plate method, or both?
Heat gun, definitely. I started with a hot plate, but I prefer the hot plate is nice because you can get them a bunch done at once. But I have shaky hands, and I need to be able to see what I'm doing. So yeah, I have buying a heat gun. And getting reading a high power magnifying glass, and actually reading a lot of tutorials on soldering helped a lot, because there are so many tips and tricks and techniques I had no idea about. So I found it really, really useful to read what people write on soldering. And speaking, if I can digress a little bit, because I tend to do that, because with things you can do with PCBs, as I did, of course. I thought those turned out really well, but of course then I had to try another version of wearables. I'm actually wearing a PCB based.
Yeah.
This combines the PCB art, the diffusion, and a number of things. So if you can see, this is actually an exclusive for your viewers. I haven't posted this on any of my feeds yet. So here's another version of it. You can see what it is. So turn the back around.
Is that resin filled into a laser?
Yes, that's exactly right. It is. Yeah, so here's a version I actually never ended up doing because there's too many LEDs for coin cell battery. But yeah, so it's a PCB, 4020 LEDs, and I use a bezel, a laser cut bezel. And I tried different versions of this. This one actually, I have one here. This one actually, instead of diffusing into resin, I diffused into little laser cut pieces of acrylic. I don't know if that's going to show. Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah, but that ended up being thicker than I wanted when you had to do that. So, but yeah, so I ended up doing a lot of experiments with resin and with different mixes and different dyes and powders inside to kind of find the mix I thought really diffused nicely. And yeah, it's a nice effect. I like it. The hardest part I've had with this is as the typical problem with wearables is power versus brightness, and how do you power? You really shouldn't be powering these LEDs up a single coin cell, and it's kind of hinky as to how much light you get. So I'm still working on a version that optimizes kind of not too big a battery with as much kind of light as I'd like.
They're gorgeous.
Thank you. I've got a heart version too, actually. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that one's
And
like.
okay, so it looks like you're not doing sanding. You're able to just fill it up to a certain point, and then the resin
Yeah,
kind of sits in there. That's
yeah. If you do it,
awesome.
yeah. No, that's the beauty. I mean, that's the thing. If I could just, I read a lot of blogs of people who aren't technical at all about how you fill things with like resin artists. I'd love
Mhm.
to combine art or wearables or things like that are not at all technical
Mhm.
with LEDs and electronics. So yeah, I spent a lot of time reading blogs people wrote about resin art, which of course, people do all kinds of things with
Oh, yeah.
LEDs, and you can learn if you do it right, you can actually kind of dome the resin. I don't know if this shows. It is
Ooh.
in a really pretty effect. It's actually a little bit higher than the edge of the bezel.
And then you get this kind of shiny effect too, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a lovely. I'm really happy with these, except for the power situation, because coin cell batteries and LEDs are kind of don't play so nicely together, and I haven't,
yeah.
So except for the power, I'm really happy with those.
Huh. Speaking of which,
Oh,
Axe Wax asks, what are your favorite brains or microcontrollers, and how do you power your wearable projects?
that is a great question. I try to go, I'm always looking for small microcontrollers. So actually, for the PCB-based ones, I'm using, AT-Tiny 85s, but and fast LED works on the AT-Tinys. There's it's been
Oh,
ported. So I love the fast LED library. However, whenever I start a project, I'm always using CircuitPython because
yeah.
it's fast and so easy, and you can make changes in real time and see them happen. So my favorite wearables microcontrollers are the Gemma M0, the Trinket M0, and now Adafruit's got a new little cutie pie, which is actually in this bracelet right here.
What?
So because they're so tiny, and it's just so easy to program them. You can't. It limits you. CircuitPython on a very, very small on a not very powerful microcontroller. You can't do large arrays of LEDs. But the nice thing about the style of wearable that I do is that I'm trying to get kind of the most light out of actually fewer LEDs. I'm not looking to create an LED matrix with hundreds and hundreds. I'm looking to actually use a few LEDs to create an effect. So I find that CircuitPython on a teeny tiny microcontroller allows me to kind of rapidly iterate through different processes, through different patterns and designs. Actually, in fact, I just got invited, just as an aside, to give a talk on how I'm using CircuitPython in my LED projects at Pi Cascades next month. Kind of fun. So.
Awesome. So anyone watching Pi Cascades, you should check out Debra's talk.
They haven't announced it yet, but I will be. I think they've just accepted me, so that's kind of exciting.
More exclusives. So if you write all your initial prototypes in CircuitPython, then when you want to get it onto the @tiny, I know that you can program those in Arduino. Do you transfer everything over to C?
Yes, most of the time. I mean, I have a stock library of effects that I tend to use over and over again, and sometimes I do things like actually. The triangle matrix back there is actually running. Jason Kuhn has a wonderful. What's it called? It's called. Jason Kuhn, who has Evil Genius Labs, has written an amazing library for the ESP32 or it's fast LED. I think it's fast LED web server that, frankly, I'm just using his code.
Nice.
I'm not even writing it, because you can actually run like dozens of effects, and you can control them. I can actually log on with my phone and actually change the effects that it's showing. So, but yeah, I'll convert them, or I'll use a library of functions that I tend to kind of reuse over and over again. Oh, there he is. Yes. Thank you, Jason. It works as well on the ESP32, I believe, too. And it's a great, it makes it so easy to make, remote controllable groups of LEDs. I think it's brilliant. And I have leaned heavily on it for many of my projects.
I'd love to show off some of the things on GeekMomProjects.com as well. These pendants that you make are just incredible. I think it's brilliant how you managed to work the coin cell battery holder into these projects and make just this huge, you clearly have sort of gotten one concept and you just spun it out into like a bajillion different versions right off the bat. That's so cool.
Thank you very much. No, you're right. That was a concept that really lent itself well to a lot of different shapes and ideas. And I appreciate that. I started with a slightly different, actually, if you scroll further back, you can see that definitely grew out of, stop right there. That grew out of kids projects. And it still is a kids project. I've run workshops with kids where we build these. In fact, this one right here was it was a Dia de los Muertos design that I did with a group of girls virtually. So I see if I can get it in focus in Los Angeles, and we built it online, and we talked about diodes and electrical circuits, and it was really it's a simple enough project that you can actually have a group of kids. You can distribute. It's cheap enough. It's simple enough that you can distribute the parts and run a workshop even virtually. I wasn't sure. I've run these in person. That was the first time I tried to do it virtually, and it worked very well. But it grew out of a project I tried to make for summer camp kids that with little trophies in the and the initial iteration had the battery. They had the battery perpendicular to the LEDs and to the illuminated surface, and I managed to. This was one of those things where I did it and just kept. It took a little while, but things kept popping in my head. What if you tried this? What if you tried this? Eventually, one of the "what if you tried this" things worked for this kind of design. But it was hard to get a design where the coin cell could be removable, stay in sturdily. Not interfere with the design too much or not look odd. So I didn't focus on it. That was one of those things that I just kind of kept working on in the back of my mind until it popped, until the right idea popped out.
Yeah. And the screws as well, how those sort of like integrate into the design itself. Is it that like the LED is sort of held in there and then you just put the battery in and it's kind of sandwiched between the legs of the LED?
That's exactly right. There are that is actually one of the projects I've written up in great detail because hopefully anybody can make it. So actually that's on my blog, and you can.
So it's already, that's where you can find them.
That's where you can find that one. I have been poor recently about documenting my projects. That's why I joke that my Twitter tweets. So that particular project is well documented on my site, and I'm trying to get back to better write-ups. I find that being at home so much is great for building things, but not so great for the focus required to actually write them.
I would also love to talk about these 7-segment display projects that you've done. So they're fun, but there's also one that you made that's actually motorized and goes up and down and stuff. Look at that.
Like that one actually isn't in a totally functional state. I have it right here. Actually, I can show you kind of how my creative process works just by showing you. It's cool. I called it it's the Wobbly Clock, and it actually right now in its more final state, it actually diffuses the digits through a very thin wooden veneer, and it actually uses kind of a cam and gears to wobble each digit randomly as it counts the time. And here's the problem with my projects is this is the electronics. I mean, I got it working, and the next step is obviously to actually make that sturdier and better. And it actually, I think there's probably just one ground wire disconnected right now that if I really looked for it, it would actually plug in and work. But that's the less fun part of doing the projects. But this was fun, and I will eventually fix it. It's not something, the problem is it's a clock that draws about an amp, so it's not really something you want to leave plugged in all the time. But it is a fun one to have around. Yeah, and that was actually kind of inspired by, it was inspired actually getting those 7-segment boards actually were given to me by Cyber City Circuits, who are actually selling some of the bright wearables bags right now. And so they sent them, and just having those made me wonder what you could do with them. And that's actually what that project read of, kind of, well, what would I do with these? Let's make a clock, but clock's been done.
Yeah.
How about a clock? And then time feels weird anyhow right now.
Yeah, I love that. It like perfectly encapsulates the feeling of quarantine.
Yes, exactly. So how could I reflect it? What could we do with that? Well, I've got these motors sitting around from an older project. What if we combine them? And that was the process there.
And where did you learn about how to do these cams and the rack and pinion situation? And what did you learn?
The internet, had never tried it. Literally never tried it until I started that project. I love the internet. So no, it was really kind of fascinating. I learned a lot about cams and rack and pinion. And I actually started with rack and pinion gears, and actually switched to cams because I was afraid of them running off the ends and hitting the ends. This was obviously.
Oh yeah.
So and it was literally, I started to learn about like different shapes for the cams and the torque involved with different angles, and it was really fast. I love picking up. Part of the reason I dive into so many different kinds of projects is I really love learning new things. Just like with string art, I've been looking for different ways now to string LEDs around, and I'm diving into topology and like how do you fill a space with a repeating pattern if you don't want to overlap yourself and repeat part of your path and things like that. So the cams, I learned about torque and and different shapes, and I learned about these shapes that are the same width. I can't remember the name of them, but they're the same width across, no matter the angle.
Oh yeah.
Circle. And for this, I'm learning about filling space and Eulerian paths, probably. So that's part of the appeal of any new project for me is, can I learn something new from it? And that's always appealing.
Wow. I'm writing down Eulerian Paths. I gotta look into this.
It's literally just me. I'm trying to take the string art into 3D, but for example, you cannot, not to drag you off into other topics, so you cannot take a single line and create the edges of cube without overlapping it. And it turns out that you can predict which 3D polyhedrons have that property, and the ones that you can actually line each edge and cover all the edges with a single unbroken line are called, that's called an Eulerian path. And then there's a Hamiltonian path where you get each vertex but not necessarily each edge. And I don't know, it may not be useful at all. I may not make it work, but I'm really fascinated by it. So,
yeah, and you get to like learn all this fascinating stuff and then apply it sometimes physically, and like it's a way of just exploring your imagination. I love it.
You get so much when that's why I love like wearables, when you combine different ideas from different domains, clothing and electronics, or light and clocks, or like Hanukkah, like a Hanukkah celebration. It's not in frame, but Hanukkah celebration and edgelet, things. I think it's just that was like with the like a Mobius strip and an LED strip. Right? I just really get so much more interesting when you bring ideas from different domains together.
Yeah, I think it's the essence of creativity. And yeah, like now that you say it, that one on the wall behind you totally would be an amazing clock. I've been mesmerized by that one.
The string art?
Yes.
Yes, I have an idea. I actually have an idea for one I have a design, that with 60, that would actually perfectly work as a clock, and that will happen. I've got some 200 LED. I needed to wait for the 200 LED string to arrive, and that's here. So there will be a clock version.
And you have this little orbular looking one there.
Yes.
It's sort of we looked at the start at your menorahs and the circly one. I love, and that's another one where you're sort of bringing that 2D idea into 3D space.
I've been really trying to search for good ways, and I haven't got one that satisfies me, to bring kind of the edgelit idea into 3D space. So that was one. That one I would do differently if I were to do it now, but it's that it's fun. Yeah, it's I built pieces that slot together, and it was mechanically challenging. Mechanically challenging, and the wiring was
wired up.
Yes, that's it. It was mechanically challenging to slot it together without disturbing the wires, and I'm not the best solderer, and just things. It was that was a project I jumped into with probably not as much planning as I should have. Had I planned it better, it would have gone together more smoothly. I made like 4 different sections that slotted together, and like one of them was wired differently from the other 3, and so that's where my method gets me into trouble. But the upside is I got it together and I got it working, so that's inspiring. And Sheldon's so sweet. Definitely for things I'm interested in. Yeah, I have a strange combination of kind of inability to focus and then kind of hyper focus, which is I'm gonna gonna do this one again and again and again until it's like what I want. So definitely, I definitely iterate on projects I like, and the string arts there are definitely a number of iterations yet to come.
Speaking
Okay.
Okay, well, speaking of which, Jay asks, do you have any big projects coming up for 2021? And I have to ask, you've been doing all these wearables with infinity mirrors. I feel like there's a really obvious uh combination here where have you ever thought about doing like an infinity gauntlet?
Infinite. Wait, no, Gauntlet. Sorry, this is not right. Gauntlet is a no.
Yeah, it's a Marvel thing where like or is it DC?
This,
I'm showing my
this,
lack of nerdery here. I think
oh, like Gauntlet is like
yeah, there you go.
This is kind of that, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like the Thanos thing where he's got the big glove with the infinity stones and stuff, and it feels like the perfect application of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically this. Although for me, it's a cuff bracelet, and I'm very into like.
Good.
My son, actually, everything I know about comics is from my middle son, I have to say. It's not really my, and he'll sometimes roll his eyes when I get it wrong. But yeah, so I do actually really like cuff bracelets. That it tends up, in fact, I'm wearing like an older, like just kind of fun prototype there. And you actually have a picture of an old one.
Cool.
Which is, so those, yeah, cuff bracelets keep recurring in my projects. I've got a few more lying around, but
made of those little. Sorry, I got so excited about your bracelet. Is that one on your wrist? Is it made of those same triangular PCBs?
No, that was not PCB at all. This was an early attempt a long time ago. This was actually 3D printed. This is simply 3D printed with LED strips. This was actually way back when. It's 3D printed LED strips on a 3D printed kind of cuff. You can kind of see like the LED strips, and it's just covered. Talk about diffuse. A different method I like for diffusing. It's covered with laser cut faux leather. I found doing a lot of prototyping for the bags. I don't know if you can see, like the bags have a similar. The LEDs don't diffuse. You can see they're kind of star-shaped holes, and that kind of it's a little bit like a diffraction grating effect. It really does spread the light out to have kind of small, non-circular holes. You don't get just the pinpoints you get.
That's so cool. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just got way too excited about that.
No, I tend to talk over people. You're not interrupting me. I think I'm interrupting you. But.
So you were going to say something else about the bracelets, though.
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna say that. Yeah, you call it a gauntlet, I call it a cuff bracelet. They're really basically the same thing. It's adapted to that. It can be kind of whatever you want it to be. That's the technique. Really works for for anything. I'm a suburban housewife in daily life, so that's though I do threaten my kids that if they don't behave, I'm going to show up at their schools wearing all my stuff.
I don't really see how that's a threat, but okay. I've seen you in that dress behind you, and it looks really, it doesn't look tacky or gaudy. It looks really, like, elegant.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is my goal. I mean, it doesn't always work out that way, but thanks. That is, because I am who I am, I like to be able to wear something, and then if I know that if I turn it off, nobody would know I'm wearing an LED wear.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I also forgot about the question, which is, do you have any big projects coming up for 2021? What are you up to next? What can you do on Instagram?
Is a good question. I don't have a singular focus. I have I would like to get back to, I don't have a good solution for this. So this is, in the back of my mind, this project, I really would like to make this workable. I think this is a wearable that a lot of people could actually wear and really enjoy. So I'm still trying to figure out how to compromise best with kind of coin cell batteries and LEDs to make this look really good. So that's I don't have anything novel in the hopper yet, aside from I've got an enormous list. I mean, I would still like to I'd like to make an edgelit 3D cube. I've got different ideas, none of which I think are perfect. That will eventually happen. Maybe if I can find the right design, that will happen. I can give you another exclusive if you want.
Oh yeah.
I will eventually get back to. Here's a project. Speaking of PCBs, I was working on that I thought was kind of fun, and I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with. But I made PCBs with each other, and but they maintain their contact through pressure contacts. So you can actually. This is actually, I don't have a really good use for it, although I thought this makes a nice necklace.
Yeah.
Different shapes.
That's a perfect use.
Yeah, so that's actually along the same lines with this, though, by the way, as a wearable with LEDs, and I'm not happy with the kind of the power to like an LED ratio. But so I want to get back to PCBs and wearables you can make with PCBs. Too.
My brain can't like wrap itself around that.
Yeah, I was really happy. This took a while, and I just couldn't figure out what to do with it, so I set it aside. But it's actually 2 layers of PCBs. One carries the signal, and one has the LEDs, and there's a little layer of acrylic in between to keep the pressure contacts from kind of smashing together and keep the whole thing. So yeah, that was kind of a fun one. So I will eventually get back to this. When I stop, like, kind of hey, what if I? The problem with some of these, I'm moving towards instant gratification projects. That's the problem with this art, is you can build one of those in like really no time. So I'm like, wait, what if I did this configuration? I got to try it to do it.
Yeah. I was working on a modular jewelry PCB thing for a while, but it was not nearly as functional or cool as that. It was super basic, and everyone is just writing in and being like, "What is that? How does it work?" Jason would be a robot, of course.
I would love to see it, actually, because I really need. I could use some help getting this done. That is my goal: is a modular LED wearable jewelry. That is, what this grew out of. And this isn't modular in that you can take it apart so much, but it is made of separate modules that can move relative to each other, at least. But
yeah,
I'll have to look up is it in your? Do you have a?
It's about Charmware. Yeah, I can send you the thingamajig. It's so basic, though. It's really just like,
You say that, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I haven't thought. There's a lot of things I don't think of until I see it and I go, oh yeah.
I'll shoot you a link. It's I'll show you real quick. So they were really just the idea was to make something that was really easy for people who are starting out with PCB design, and also like something where you can stick any kind of component onto the same module. So like the same module can accept like a reed switch or an LED or a resistor or a diode or a button or whatever. And then like there's a few larger modules that are like for batteries and whatnot. I tried to make some little diffusers, but those didn't work super great because of tenting. I learned there's so much like always to learn about PCB design and stuff, but yeah.
Anyway, okay, that's my afternoon read. Thank you.
And for everyone else's afternoon read, be sure that you check out GeekMomProjects. Is there anything else you'd like to throw in there before we wrap up?
Not so much, other than to kind of, I get a lot of people because wearables are like wearables were my entry point into electronics, and I started 12 years ago with literally, I had a tech background, but not at all a hardware background. I started with sewing, conductive thread and LEDs and an Arduino LilyPad. That's really how I got started. And it's literally just my persistence and kind of as Charlene nicely said, my iterative kind of nature is how I got this far. So like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, I couldn't do this 12 years ago. I couldn't do any of it. So like anybody who wants to get started in making cool stuff, you just start. And the trick is not to worry about the mistakes so much. Is what I've learned over time is that there are going to be mistakes about probably more than half of my ideas don't work out, but I really have been, it's like golf. I said the ones that go in, the ones that really work, I really keep you going for the rest of the process. So no, I just encourage everybody to build stuff, especially with LEDs, because it's cool.
Yeah, LEDs are cool. I also love how you've used all of these Adafruit technologies. You started out with a LilyPad. You've got, NeoPixels and stuff. You're working with the Circuit Python boards and stuff. And now you're also, so you started out learning with a LilyPad, and now you're writing tutorials for Adafruit. That's so cool.
It feels like I've come full circle. I am an enormous fan of Adafruit and their Learn Guides. I found them incredible. I have referenced them so many times and still do. I mean, constantly. I love that they've taken, because of their Learn Guides, I don't fully understand it, but I can at least use Bluetooth. It has made this technology accessible to someone without I don't have a background in hardware at all. And I've learned everything I've learned from reading on the internet, and their Learn Guides take all these technologies I want to learn and made it accessible. And I'm grateful for that. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of anybody. That's why I feel bad about not being a better documenter. I'm a huge fan of anybody who takes the time to really explain it. And, because so many times you go in a forum and people just kind of assume this base level of knowledge. And I'm like, which I don't have. So finding people to explain kind of the real basics to me has enabled my creativity and my ability to kind of express it in real world projects so well. And I really appreciate that.
And you yourself are such an inspiration to all these people coming in on the comments and stuff. I can't wait for you to be able to like go back and read them, because everyone is just, especially that new interconnecty thing, everyone's in love with it. That's fascinating. Okay, cannot wait to see more. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we can't wait to see what you do next. All right, ciao. Thank you everyone else for joining too. Yeah, cool.